Good day.
Those are actually tested. Yeah?
Those are tested. Those are prescription. All right.
So I wear them on a daily basis.
I think right now, a lot of people are going to be wondering if their glasses are prescription as well, right? Because they're not used to seeing this, right? But good day, everyone. How are you guys doing? Anthony here. I'm actually here chatting with a good friend of mine, Mr. Lennox Shuman. Okay, and you know, while I have Mr. Shuman here, I've been curious about a lot of things. Didn't have an opportunity to really talk to him since he's you know, from the whole merger of the three groups to how everything's been going on in Parliament. I mean, I've been seeing some stuff coming out from you. In fact, just yesterday, I believe it was yesterday. Yeah. Day before yesterday, I saw a post, and it seems like you were stopped by the police and you encountered something, right? Tell me a little bit about that experience, man.
Well, Anthony, let me just say it's overdue. I mean, we haven't seen each other in quite a while, but it's good to finally get caught up again. Not from a lack of want, it's just trying to get things worked out.
Right, it's the job. It's the
job.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was actually coming back from my community on Sunday. Driving out, my driver was off, so I'm driving myself out. The police stopped me at Pearl, and when I put the window down, the man looked into the window and pointed in a very derogatory manner. He said, "Hey, Buckman, yeah, you know your man done?"
Wait, so he didn't recognize you at the...
Whether he did or did not is inconsequential to the discussion. The fact of the matter is that I actually stopped him and I said, "Officer, your language, sir, is very unprofessional." And he continued along the same line. And I said, "Sir, your language is inappropriate." And I asked for his badge number, and he was wearing one of the reflective vests that covered up his badge number. So I asked for his badge number. He said, "You know, you know," and I said, "Sorry, carry on." So I just followed up with a Facebook post, and then I called the Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Hicken, on the matter. The National Security Advisor, Mr. Jerry Gavaya, also called, and we had it resolved. The officer actually issued an apology. I got an apology from Mr. Hicken on behalf of the force, and the officer wrote out an apology. I have that in the car, where he apologized for his behavior, his language, his tone, demeanor, and all that stuff.
Well, I'm happy that he took his reprimanding, but now there's a larger issue there, though, right? The larger issue is most other persons would not have that same type of representation that you have.
Understood.
And what type of recommendations would you make?
Well, one of the things that I told the Deputy Commissioner, I said, look, my concern is not necessarily to reprimand one person. It is how do we change the system. And based on one of my Facebook posts not too long ago, I had spoken to Mr. Hicken about the very same thing. And I said, how do we deal with sensitizing the police force to Indigenous peoples, the first peoples of this country? How do we deal with ensuring that they're not victims of poor policing and poor policing method? How do we deal with inclusion, amongst a variety of things? So it's unfortunate to know that after about a week and a half after that discussion, we got to this point where I encountered that. What I told Mr. Hicken and I told the officers present at that discussion is that it doesn't matter if it's a fly on the wall or an ant in that car. The language is unbecoming of a person in public service, a person who gets paid by taxpayers' money. I, as a person being paid by taxpayers' dollars and myself, for me to go and treat anyone in this country with any degree of disrespect means that I do not respect my boss. And my boss is the, John Public or Jane Public, whoever is in the public domain. Any private person, even the public servants in themselves, pay part of my salary. So I have to give them the utmost respect as an elected official and also as a public servant. And the public service in itself needs to look at things that way. Anyone that walks into their office, that is their boss walking in. It is not the other way around. We're here to do the people's work. And we have to be able to treat the people that are paying us with some degree of respect.
Well, I can tell you what, you can still get it better than me. The other day I get pulled over. You get called up, man. At least the Amerindians are indigenous to Guyana. Every time they pull me over, they call me Yankee. Right? So I could definitely tell you there needs to be some sort of social training, right, that should be given to the force in terms of how they respond to the public. I think that is the responsibility of our security ministry to help train and make sure that our officers and our public servants lead by example and are not derogatory or biased in their statements or their language toward other people here in this country. Because at the end of the day, we know as a society, racism has been a huge issue here. So we need to be counteracting all forms of biasness on an everyday basis. We need to make it part of our natural behavioral pattern to be respectful, to be considerate of, how people feel.
Anthony, there's one thing that I'm hearing a lot of people put forth an argument, well, we're all Guyanese. Well, yes, we're all Guyanese. The indigenous peoples are the first peoples of this country. We're the most marginalized. If you look at any study, it'll talk about the critical link between indigenous peoples, the protection of our identity, the protection of the forest, amongst a variety of things. And you're going to have people repeat that discussion, that conversation over and over. Never ever understanding the indigenous peoples, our unique place in Guyana, that we were here before Guyana. We've never ceded an inch of territory to any colonial master. That is a reality in this country. We have never given anything and say, look, take this. It was taken from us. That's one.
You had no choice. You had no choice. You were outgunned.
No, but actually, that is... Let me offer a correction in the public domain right now.
Please.
Is that when the Dutch were actually in Guyana, the Dutch had to sign peace treaties with the indigenous peoples of this country because they couldn't enslave us, and even though they attempted to infiltrate our lands and to invade our lands, we were always at battle with them. And the Dutch actually signed peace treaties with indigenous peoples of this country.
Well,
the unfortunate thing...
This is the first time I've learned this, and I think for a lot of people, this might be the first time a lot of them would have came to understand this as well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is there has been when the Brits took over, they didn't respect those treaties, and even if you look, and I keep telling people this, right, the only conditionality upon which we gained independence was for indigenous peoples to get their lands. Now, if it is for us to get back what was rightfully ours, how now do you and I come and say, well, we're equal? I've always had possession of my territory. I've lived here for time immemorial. And you came, let's say, lately. Now, how are we the same?
No, because one was there first. One was the original owner.
Exactly.
And somebody come, divide up the place, and suddenly you got 10 owners. But the original owner never agreed to that.
But once again, if you look at the Constitution, in preamble, it talks about the unique identity and respect and inclusion of indigenous peoples in this country. If you look at Article 149G, it talks about our rights to the protection, preservation, and promulgation of our cultural identity. Now, part of our cultural identity is that we have always communally owned land. We've lived communally. Now, if we do that and we own a territory, how does that make you and I equal? It doesn't.
It doesn't.
You would have to buy your land. We own it because of our inherent rights.
Yep.
And I hear people talking. I mean, we just had a visitor who said, man, you should be fighting for all Guyanese. Well, you have 64 other members of parliament who are fighting for the coastal communities. And not a single one of them is really fighting for indigenous peoples in this country. So that is my position, where I have to look out for the most marginalized population and ensure that we are not left out of any kind of formula of this country going forward in the new oil and gas economy.
Well, talking about the gentleman that was here not too long ago, thinking on what he says, right? A lot of people see you as a very transparent and fair leadership figure here in this country. And some persons might have the interpretation that when you say you're here to fight for your people who have been significantly marginalized, they might use that and try to spin it. You understand what I'm saying? Try to spin it as if you don't care. But I know you personally, and I know you're here to fight for everybody.
Anthony, here is.
But I understand the disposition of our indigenous people, because technically they were raped for everything that they had.
Right, but understand this. Let's contextualize that statement, right?
Yes.
When I talk about fighting for indigenous peoples, it is to let's get the entire country at a state of equity first. Because until we have equity, if we fight for all Guyanese within one framework per se, right? That is where we're at. We're fighting for everyone. So if we're elevating everyone and there is an equity, all we're doing, the indigenous peoples are here, the rest of the country is here, and we're fighting for everyone, we still fight to preserve and continue that inequity. What I'm trying to do is to ensure that there is no inequity, to bring everyone to the platform. Exactly. And then when we get to that platform,
we move together.
Now all of us move together. It is no longer this group barely struggling to survive. It is now all of us have gotten to that place of equity. Now all of us can move forward together. And that is what that is literally what I'm fighting for. Yes, it doesn't mean that the conversations that deal with national identity, economic and political inclusion, all those things are not happening. What we're talking about is to ensure that we eliminate inequity in society, and then we talk about inclusion in every single aspect of Guyana. Wow. That is what we're talking about. But some people don't understand that when I talk about, the coastal politics.
Take my hand through the flame.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, about people
I actually like my ringtone.
Fighting for the coastal communities. You don't have parliamentarians who are looking out for the indigenous peoples of this country. Look at this. We have
in saying that, what is the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs doing on an act?
Let me get to that, right? We have a president who went to COP26. They developed something called the Intended National Determined Contribution, the INDC. After it's ratified, it becomes now the NDC, National Determined Contribution to COP26. How do we combat climate change? The UN, a variety of NGOs and international bodies have recognized the critical importance of indigenous peoples in combating climate change, our role to protecting the forests, and how climate change is actually adversely affecting the most marginalized population in the world. They have recognized that. Unfortunately, the government of Guyana does not recognize that, because in them formulating the COP26 contribution, they have not consulted with the indigenous peoples on that very important framework.
But it was already put together.
It was already, that is what the president is going to go to the UK and present on COP26. This is what we're going to do. Now the indigenous peoples have never been consulted on that framework.
So there's no consultation from the people that are actually involved in the whole discussion.
None.
Okay.
And not only that, like I said, the UN, amongst a multitude of international bodies, have recognized the importance of indigenous peoples in combating climate change and protecting the forests, and obviously in how climate change negatively impacts them. It is unfortunate that the government in themselves have not looked at indigenous peoples and our critical role in combating climate change in that sense.
I'll tell you this. I still can't understand how that could be put forward to the UN without the consideration and the consultation from the indigenous people who it is supposed to represent at the end of the day, right? So tell me something. What do you see as the best course of action for the government to take in empowering the indigenous people here in this country?
That is a very loaded question. I don't think that the formula or the drive has ever been to empower indigenous peoples, because when you empower people and they start to think for themselves, it means that they depend on you less. And the more indigenous people start to think for themselves, it means that less and less they will have to depend on central government. It now means that they cannot utilize resources as a leverage to getting their votes. If empowerment was ever the question, the way to empower indigenous peoples is to ensure that there isn't just a local content policy that deals with international business coming to Guyana, that there must be a local content legislation, that there is actually a law when it deals with local content that speaks to how Indigenous peoples are incorporated in that, or how that law in itself impacts Indigenous peoples. Everyone knows that policy papers are written and sometimes they're set aside. Well, it's a policy, it's not a law, so we don't have to adhere to it. So you could write local content policy all you want. While I say it's important to have that as the initial framework, what becomes even more critical is to ensure that the legislation that is put together is what that local content policy now says and how it impacts Indigenous communities. And let me say it from a bit more of an organic perspective, right? If there's a road that goes into an Indigenous community, you get someone from the coast who is going to go and build that road, and they take menial, basically the baseline, the bottom level employment from that community. The lion's share of the money comes back to the coast, goes out to building people their mansions and everything else. And the Indigenous peoples, by the end of a month, they get their $60,000. They get a road, yes, but they don't have the kind of economic tools to now develop themselves further.
Exactly. They're stuck waiting for help.
Right. The second thing is, if you look per capita, you're going to find that the state spends per capita, I'd say maybe 100 to 200 times. We haven't really crunched the numbers yet, but those are going to come. 100 to 200 times more on the person on the coast compared to a person in the hinterland. If you look at the roads that are being built just on the coast, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, right? If you calculate that hundreds of billions of dollars compared to the menial, maybe 100 million to the hinterland communities,
exactly.
You're going to see the disproportionality there. If you look at all of the emergency equipment and the medical services provided to the coast, you're going to look at all the expired drugs and a variety of things that happen in Indigenous communities, and you calculate that is a fraction that is provided to those communities per capita.
Question.
If you look at education,
not to cut you. Question. Currently, we have a lot of investment coming into Guyana. Even up to the other day, our president, went to Dubai. We're talking about the expansion with the Dubaians coming here and investing in our sector. How will that affect the Indigenous communities? Positively or negatively? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
I think it's going to be a very interesting formula going forward. While there are some positives for the economy, positive to see investment coming to the country, I think that without proper local content legislation, that Guyanese will not own Guyana. And as you can see already, we don't own the oil and gas sector.
Exactly.
We don't own a tremendous amount of it. If you were to see who the contractors are that are working with Exxon is an American company. Well, all of them, Connaught, Hess, Total, all of them, external companies, right? People building the FPSOs built in Singapore. People who are operating the service vessels, Trinidadians. People providing security, external. People who are providing supplies and all these things, all external. So for us, what we are coming in at, once again, is just a baseline minimum wage per se. And maybe even in some cases below minimum wage employment.
But does local content policy help to stabilize the wage difference? In accordance to Guyanese doing the same job that an American would be doing if they were working on one of these vessels. Does it balance it out? Is there an equal balance here?
I don't see that there is an equal balance in that regard. An American may come here, they'll make maybe 200 plus a year US as a driller. But you have to remember that they have also the kind of experience that the company needs. For me to bring on someone and give them a one-month training, they may not have the kind of experience that we require to be able to do the same job. Yes, we're doing the same job, but our experience level obviously varies a little, right?
Of course, there's a great deal of variance there.
But there should be a phase-out process. That if I bring an Anthony Snow here, I'm paying him $200 a year to be a driller, and Lennox Shuman is from Guyana, and I'm paying him maybe 200 Guyana dollars a month, right?
Exactly.
200,000.
It's greatly disproportionate.
Exactly. But after a while, there must be a point where I'm phasing out Anthony Snow. So while my wage starts to go up, that there is also a decrease in utilization of an Anthony Snow in Guyana. So that when I get the kind of experience, the minimal experience at that point, that I'm being paid the Anthony Snow's salary, and we don't need a Snow in Guyana anymore.
Yeah,
so
exactly,
now I've replaced him. So there must be a phase out.
Professionals
exactly.
who can handle it.
There must be a phase out process for that, whereby the experience and the local content legislation has to be critical. You have to ensure that the indigenous peoples are included. I had this discussion with several people.
Have you seen attempts from the government to directly invest into the personalized training of individuals here in this country to make them applicable to that industry?
I can't say that I have. Whether it exists or not, maybe I'm not exposed to any news releases or any briefing paper on it.
Because I haven't seen that yet.
Right. So that is a question that I cannot answer.
Because, in my mind, just my opinion, if we know we're bringing in people from outside, we should be investing in training our people to get to that level. Because eventually, like you said, Guyanese wouldn't own Guyana.
Well, it's already at the point where we don't own Guyana. Anthony, let me tell you this. A foreign national, and we've seen it, they could come to Guyana and get every single thing done in a matter of a week. They would get a plot of land, they would go through transfer papers, they get all of the EPA permits, blah, 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 whatever, in a matter of weeks.
Well, that's fast. I'm Guyanese. I've been taking years to get certain things.
Exactly. And here's something.
And I live here.
Here's something that even bites a little bit harder. I applied to do sand mining, right? I applied for actually initially when we went and saw the plot, it was 350 acres to do sand mining. This is up Low Creek area. Taken out by the Deputy Commissioner of GLSC, Mr. Hudson. We saw the land, we applied for it, asked for no objection from GLSC to do that. GLSC responded that the land that there are conflicting lease on the property. When we went and looked at the land, when we looked at the actual map, there was no existing lease on it. And when I saw Mr. Maniz at Massey, when I went in there on July the 26th, he said, Lennox, we actually canceled your application. We gave that land to someone else, I was flabbergasted at that remark.
My question is,
the next thing is,
based on due process, they should still have the application, they should still have everything there. And they're supposed to be able to provide evidence to say if somebody was there before you. They can't just throw your stuff out because of their negligence.
What Mr. Maniz said is that the president has put a halt to all sand mining license. You're putting a halt to something, but yet you have people who are still mining sand. Are you waiting for certain people's sand to be depleted before you go and get others? Because it seems like there's a favoritism in that one.
There's still a lot of favoritism in
the second thing is, last year in October, I applied for a 15-acre plot, non-contested, up the highway. 15 acres, not to do sand mining, to set up a small business. To date, I'm still waiting. No idea where or when that process is going to be completed. Now you've got foreigners.
If you want, I would follow it up for you. I don't mind. No, I'm serious. I would follow it up for you. I'm interested in seeing too, because as a Guyanese, I never get a piece of land. I never get anything from the country, and I walk in and give it back to the country all the time.
And not only that, I'm an indigenous person. We want to include indigenous peoples in this economy. I've been told that my document is sitting on the president's desk and has been sitting there for how many months, but it has not been signed.
You know what's the problem? You should have sent it in on a magic carpet. You should have sent it on a magic carpet. Because the magic carpet just gets straight to the big buys.
Anthony, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. The government is talking about remigrants, about the diaspora coming back to invest in all these things. I have this message
I'm so happy
for our remigrant brothers and sisters. The government of Guyana will preach a good word. They'll say we're interested in remigrants and the diaspora to come back and invest. In all reality, there's only one thing that the government of Guyana is interested in. They're not interested in your money because they have enough foreign investors. They're not interested in your ideas because your ideas are too progressive for them. The only thing that the government of Guyana is interested in is when you go to the ballot box and you put your tick next to that cup, which is the vote. Outside of that, they're not interested in anything else. That is it.
Okay, well, I tell you this, right? I can't say me because up to the other day I was having a discussion with a business friend, business colleague of mine, and we were talking about something that we call the migrant trap or the remigrant trap, right? And we've seen so many people come to remigrate into Guyana after the government puts out the calls and say, hey, you know, come, we're gonna keep you safe. We're gonna do these things for you. And when you come now, they might help you get the house lot fast, but you're paying your money for it.
But even that is not.
And then where they put you, you don't know is who or what you there around. By the time they put you in certain areas, you become a victim, right? And it's horrible. I know a lot of people came down and look, there's a hotel over here. This is a perfect example. I just want to show people this real fast because there's a perfect example. The thing right there, the big building right there, that was a building that somebody came and was migrating back to Guyana, I believe, and putting up a hotel to invest in Guyana. But out of, you know, I would say magic, around that time, there were 2 buildings going up. The building that we are currently sitting in, and that building. One building was bailed out by the government, and then later sold to a private company. No disrespect. By the way, Princess, Ramada, you guys look good, right? No disrespect. You're sort of nice bad, right? But, you know, the other person who was called to invest, you know, who came down and pushed their money in and started to invest in the country, they were kind of left halfway, right? When everything else started collapsing, the government bailed out one and left the next one. So that definitely looks like favoritism to me in one area, right? Me, personally speaking, right? I remigrated back into Guyana. I'm investing in Guyana. And right now, even though I've been paying taxes for years and years and years for my properties, I still have to go and build my own road. So I can tell you, if you don't know what you're doing and you answer to the wrong call and you come here and you don't know what you're doing, you could be trapped. Your finances, things like this, it could be a trap, because at the end of the day, if you come based on, you know, somebody saying, come, spend your money, you come, you spend your money, and then they walk away from you and you have no assurance, you lose.
Let me put things in perspective. I, Lennox Shuman, gave up my citizenship. I had lived in Canada for, well, you know, close to 30 years I've been a Canadian. Gave that up to come back and contest for parliamentary office in this country, right? I left my job. My family, we were back and forth, but under the previous regime we were threatened, so now we're in a different era. But still, it created a fear. I am a member of the First Nations, the Indigenous peoples in Guyana. I've remigrated, and I am telling you that I'm finding it difficult to even find an inroad to do anything in this country.
And
look at the sacrifice.
Hold on. And imagine, you are a man with great upstanding character. So imagine how hard it was for a man like me, who people be lying and slandering on, to still find a way to survive.
And imagine the other. I get you. And imagine,
it's a war, you know. You got to come out swinging, right?
And imagine the people who want to come back to Guyana and who have a tremendous amount of resources and a variety of things. Now, if I would have given up all those things and I still can't find an inroad, when you come back here, you know, as a remigrant, I don't see the government making any meaningful changes to a variety of things to encourage people to come back to Guyana.
I can tell you this. I'm building my own road, right? So, I mean, you gotta know, right? Of course, I'm gonna do it for me and my people, because at the end of the day, whether the government perform or they don't perform, people need things. So we gotta work together, and that's what, you know, that's what I'm about. right? Where somebody failed, we still got to get the job done.
Once again, the government is not interested in ideas of our people in the diaspora. Those ideas are a bit too progressive, and I think it may develop some traps for them so that they can't go and hide contracts, hide tendering processes, hide money, hide a variety of things, right? If you bring some, let's say for example, you know how many people that I've met that want to come and produce a digitized
not
system?
to cut you, but
let me finish this.
you sound like you're going to be a damn good opposition leader, and the opposition is sitting without proper leadership right now. If the opposition come and say, Mr. Shuman, listen, check this out. We think you're a fair and balanced person, and we need a good leader that could count past 65 and know how to do things. You understand? And one that don't drive yacht and stuff. And they said, Mr. Shuman, help lead the opposition to where they need to be.
We would get there. But if someone came and they said, look, we want to digitize the system, right? All your records, everything else. What that digitization does is it now starts to trap all of the corruption. And when you can find a way to trap and mitigate that corruption, it creates a problem for the establishment. Because many of them are, and I don't want to slander anyone, but I would say many of them are happy with the system as it is because I can go
they
there
get
and
rich.
there's no something under the table and there's no paper trail for it, right? The fact that Brickdam burned down, who knows what records have gone with that? Who knows how many charges have been
Do you believe Clarence Green?
disgraced with
Do you
that?
believe Clarence Green was able to burn down that whole place while inside of a cell?
I will not offer an opinion on that. That is for the investigation.
I tell you, that man is like Jesus Christ. The man there over here and everything over there, but no. Right? So I don't know, man. It's just some funny stuff. Guyana is not the real place.
But look at this, right? We have people who have local partners in Guyana. Local partners in Guyana that applied for the Mele Falls Hydro project, didn't get the bid. Instead, they gave it to China Harbor. We have
what was the track record?
I don't know, but there are also people who have Guyanese partners in investment who applied for the Damara Harbor.
Just okay, China Harbor. If you heard me say anything, don't feel no way funny.
This is not a personal attack.
No. I just still hire your Chinese truck them. Guys, they're good trucks, Chinese truck. But y'all, remember, I'm a friend, right? So we're just talking though. It's a discussion. Okay.
Yeah. So you have people who have local partners in this country who applied for the Damara Harbor Bridge also. Didn't get considered. So now how are you going to come and tell me we're interested in what Guyanese have to offer? You're talking about local content. You're talking about Guyanese partners.
I know too many Guyanese who got skill, got equipment. They putting two bids. Nobody ain't getting it. Nobody ain't getting no.
Anthony, I get that.
Nobody did.
But let me also say this in defense of part of the process is that you also have a lot of Guyanese who are doing a slam dash mediocre work and expecting to get full paid and considered. If you want to do something constructive in the country and in the industry, I would encourage all people who are getting contract, do it up to or better than standard. Don't do substandard work and expect that you're going to get considered again. I'm not.
I believe there should be a penalty. Somebody collect me money. They do a slap dash work. They got paid and fix it.
I strongly support that, right? But on the same token, you have people who have partnered with international firms in Guyana. You tell me who the local partner for China Harbor is. Who's the local partner? You tell me, about the labor force. You tell me about how much local content they have, how much they buy from the local Guyanese, all those things. They come in, they bring in their labor, they bring in their finances, no doubt, they bring in all of the material, they ship on their own ships and all that stuff, so it comes into the country. And then they build and everything else. What we end up with is a finished product, and then they take all of that money, they pay their people back in China, so we don't get any kind of the economic drive from that.
Well, I can tell you one thing, Lennox. Everything that you're saying here is the same thing that are on the lips of persons within the industry right now. Even in the trucking industry, trucking and logistics, where I'm located right now, I can tell you there is a lot of foreign companies that get advantage over us Guyanese. No, it's a serious thing.
I laugh.
When we gotta buy a truck for 14 million, the foreign company get them for bringing the truck for $8 million, thing like this, because they ain't gotta pay the same. They get fuel concession, they get all sorts of breaks, and we in the industry, we suck in south. That's where they left us. That's where they left us. They left us to pay the bill.
I laugh because there's a race truck company in Guyana. I'm sure you would have seen it. It's called Junior Sammy Racing Company.
Junior Sammy.
Yeah, Junior Sammy Racing Company. Because when you see Junior Sammy's truck, I don't know what he has, about 100 trucks that he brought into Guyana, probably duty free, probably tax free. Who knows what other concessions and contracts he's getting. And not only that,
they get good leverage. I tell you this, they just get good leverage.
And his drivers,
Princess, you got good planted.
When you see those guys when you see them drive on the road, it's like these guys want to run you off the road. They own the road. Yes, they're Guyanese drivers, but look at the name, right? You tell me about the Guyanese that wants to bring in 10 trucks to say, man, we want duty free, we want this consideration and that. Not a single one.
I could show you Guyanese who's struggling just to get one, and we don't get the breed.
I go back to this. I applied for a 15-acre, a small plot of land for 1 year, and I'm taking a beating on it. You've got a company that came into the country that went and bulldozed 100 acres of protected forest, the mangroves. And all that the government said, well, the investment has to come to Guyana, we have to make room for investment. So I'm going to go and break the law, the protected mangroves that you destroyed and bulldozed. And I'm not applying to go and bulldoze any mangroves. I'm applying for a 15-acre plot of land in the savannah to do something, and you're going to tell me, well, I can't get it?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to follow up on the process, right? Because I ain't got nothing better to do. I like this stuff. This stuff, creative. Ministry, housing, Guyana Land and Survey are coming, baby, are coming, right? Coming soon, right? I get the permission too, right? So when I come asking about the document, y'all know, certified, right? Now, I tell you this though, it's been really, really unfair, and I just speak on behalf of a couple thousand people that I'm representing right now, and I can tell you, we feel left out, you know, and we are looking to the representatives of the people who are sitting in Parliament to have some consideration on what's going on, and look to see where they can help to make the situation for us on the ground here, you know, a little bit easier, a little bit more livable, based on the circumstances, because there's still a lot of people in our country struggling. A lot of things, I mean, you might see things in the media, you know, and I don't trust the local media because there's too much favoritism in local media. So when we go out
they're owned by the camps, right?
And that's a problem, right? So sometimes it feels like we don't have any independent media.
Look, before elections, I used to like Newsroom. And I've issued 2 separate articles, both of them maybe not shedding good light on the government, and not a single one of them have been published. And I will continue to do what I've been tasked to do, which is to be a member in the opposition benches, and I will continue to speak out on issues that I feel the Guyanese public need to understand. If there's one thing that I will express gross disappointment for, Anthony, is if you look at the Armenian Act, it talks about Armenian land titles. And there is a section in the law that talks about indigenous peoples and our land titles. Successive governments have wanted to use that and say, man, we give you your title.
How can you give a man something
that he already owns, right? But that's one. The second thing is the government has been in office for over a year. I think a year plus 3 months now. And not a single land title, zero land titles in a year and 3 months. And when you campaigned on ensuring that our people have rightful ownership documents for the lands that we have traditionally owned, used, and occupied. Now, how now after a year and 3 months you get 0 land titles? And who are you going to blame that on? You can't blame it on anyone else. That means the government can't blame it on anyone else because they're in administration now.
Okay, now I want to say something to the viewers who are watching, right? Let me first and foremost tell you that currently I am a member of the PPP, right? And I want everyone to understand that you can be a member of any political party and still listen and still have a discussion, still have an objective mind, you know, and have these types of discussions. I've seen many times when people of different parties come together, you know, some of their leadership comes down on them, other party members come down on them. And this is something that I keep wanting to tell, I'm going to be very consistent about it on my streams, which is we're each entitled to our own opinions. We should each have the right to support some aspects of what we like, and we should have the right to disagree with something if we don't see it working, the way it's supposed to work, or, objective to what it is that we need, right? Now, I want to see this country come fair and balanced. Mr. Shuman, you're a leader in our society, and you're a growing leader. And I know that from knowing you as a colleague, that you are a very good man. And I know the sacrifice that you had to make to be here, to sacrifice that many who are even watching would not make. How much are you giving up your papers for come and fight down here in a place you're born, but people still tell you you don't belong? Very few of us are willing to take that challenge, right?
You tell me something because I reflect on things with some great humor, right? I remember when I came back to Guyana and started to contest in politics as an indigenous person who have centuries, millennia of history in this country. My foreparents were the first peoples in this land. And when I came back and started to contest elections, people are saying, go back to Canada, go back to Canada. Or are you going to chase me from my...
I know our society is filled with a certain degree of ignorance. Like I said, I'm called Yankee. They call me white boy, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm pretty red, man. These days with the sun, I get to call red. Man, I feel a little nicer now, right? I feel exotic, right? Tell me a little bit about what it's like for you sitting there in Parliament now. Like in terms of how does it feel? Do you feel you're making the most impact that you can make from where you're at right now?
No.
What type of things do you feel are holding you back?
Well, I'm happy that I had a discussion with the leader of the opposition some time back. I think my most effective tool, in my humble view, is my ability to be able to reach across the aisle and to speak to members of both parties, to be able to open a channel of communication. So when I spoke to the leader of the opposition, he was very open to discussions. And obviously what came out of that was a call to the president to ensure that they follow the constitutional process to appointing a substantive Chancellor and Chief Justice. The president obviously backtracked on his remark where he had set preconditions. He now says that there's no condition of meeting with the leader of the opposition, but his tone still is not one that I would expect. There's still a little bit of combativeness in that tone, right? I think the dialogue in itself is important. One of the things that disappoints me a bit is that there seems to be a disingenuous dialogue to a certain extent. I remember when I had a discussion with the Attorney General and the Minister of Governance on including or ensuring that Indigenous peoples are included in the Law Reform Commission. It was a discussion that lasted about 5 months to get the National Two-Shows Council to nominate someone on that commission, only to know that when that person was nominated, the Attorney General struck off their name from that list. So now Indigenous peoples are not part of the Law Reform Commission. That's a very important commission. All of the laws in this country, in my humble view, negatively impact
so they don't have
the
any indigenous person within that commission right now?
If you look at the variety of structures that exist, you don't have an indigenous person at the head of any commission, at the head of any agency, included in some major structures and all of them, not in the Law Reform Commission, which is a very important and critical commission in this country. The Mines Act, the Forest Act, the Armenian Act in itself, the Constitution, all of these things comprise various structures in law. And to not have Indigenous peoples have a voice in the overarching or overriding body that looks at these laws, what does that tell you about the value you have for Indigenous peoples? It means that you don't value their input.
You don't value their opinion.
Exactly. Well, not only opinion, you don't value how the laws affect them. You have no value for them, really, because you're making laws in silos where they're not being consulted and they don't have a seat at the table. And even at that level, people are going to say, well, Mr. Shuman, you're in Parliament. Of course you have a seat.
Yeah,
at the table.
because that's,
I
you know.
have a seat in the opposition. We all know that the government could ramrod anything through Parliament because they have the majority.
They have the majority.
So it doesn't matter what I say in Parliament, the government going forward would not want to change any of those laws to accommodate Indigenous peoples.
Okay. Now, a big question. Do you plan on contesting in the next election?
Anthony, that is a very difficult question to answer. I will say, as it stands right now, we are still planning on building towards the next election. What formula that takes on going forward, we have to sit down and look at it. I have a very important constituent that I have to deal with, and that is my family.
Okay, definitely.
If my family cannot buy on to what I have to do, and I will say my lovely wife Amanda and her 3 beautiful kids, my brothers and sisters, mom and dad, they've endorsed me to this point. They've supported me tremendously. And I have to ensure that whatever I do has their blessings going forward. If it does not, then it becomes a difficult question to answer. I'm not saying that they have said no, we have not had the conversation as yet.
Don't worry, if you don't run, I can run. You protect your family. I can take some
I will
risks.
also...
I can run faster, right? I'm light.
I will also say that we are still planning for 2025. We are planning on coming with a lot more force behind us for 2025, and I'm sure that whatever we plan to do, that we are going to get the kind of support that we need, whether it's from my family, from my friends or friends, and from our constituents. We fully intend on driving as hard as we can.
Okay. Now, you said you spoke to the leader of the opposition the other day, right? And I don't want to go like too deep into certain things, right? But I just want to ask you a question. You don't have to answer this question, right? But based on the current situation of the opposition, do you foresee, notwithstanding the new parties that came in recently, but the APNU, PNC side of the opposition, do you foresee them being able to rise back to a standard where the country would give them that chance for leadership again?
Look, we've got an ever-growing young electorate in this country. The young electorate are very optimistic about the future. They're less concerned about race politics. They're more concerned about, building their consciousness, about voting differently, about building a country, an inclusive country.
Well, you answered it right there. Because once you said young people don't want to hear race politics, they kind of answered it.
Yeah. And I think that is. It will be a championing call for the PPP when they go to the electorate again, that they're going to go back and say, if it is not us, it is them. But I will tell the electorate right now, and everyone who's looking at it, that what we are looking for is to be the balance of power in Parliament.
We need that.
And once we get the balance of power, I will say it is now inconsequential who sits in the big house, because we now have the responsibility to holding them to account and ensuring that the changes that they had committed to undertaking, that those things are done. We talk about constitutional reform continuously and consistently, but I will tell you that if the leader of the opposition and the president are not even meeting and having a discussion, they don't even have dialogue, how do you expect constitutional reform to be part of that discussion when you don't have a discussion at all?
The two main representatives can't even talk to one another.
Exactly.
So how are they supposed to fix the country then? This is a little confusing. This is something that we need to know, because we're supposed to be pushing cohesion. So if the biggest people at the top are unwilling to sit down and make time to hash out their differences, then I think we really have a lot to
having the
consider.
balance of power now, actually, while we may not force them physically, we force them by policy and in principle.
Yeah, you put police in Parliament. That's what I call police in Parliament.
Right, so now we have an opportunity to bring those guys to say, look, you want this bill to pass, you need to sit down and have this discussion with this person, right? And that is how you have to navigate. Politics is all about talking to people and ensuring that you get the things done for the people, in my humble view, right? the next component is if the chair of GCOM decides that she wants to hang up her hat and say, you know what, I resign. That means that until they agree on a chair for the commission, that we're not going to have elections. Now, if you and I are not talking, the chair resigns. Where are we going with the election?
You can't get no meeting.
Local
you can't get
government
no
election
conclusion.
in itself is not going to happen. We're in November already. We're supposed to have local government elections in November, and right now we can't even. We don't even have a substantive CEO, DCO, and other structures in the Guyana.
That is a seriously
Right? So how now do we get this
detrimental side to worry about, right?
So
Because if local government election was supposed to be called already, and the current administration has not been able to call a local government election, that means the same people that were sitting in there from before 2020, who were all more than likely not working effectively, will not be changed.
But here is what duplicity looks like. During office, you know, the PPP were on the president and say, no, GCOM has to set, the president sets a date for elections and GCOM has to comply. Well, now the shoe is on the other foot. The Minister of Local Government needs to set the date and say, look, GCOM, this is the date that is set. Now GCOM has a time frame within which they need to get
their
that
due
machinery
process.
order.
They have to go through it.
So you can't now come back and say, well, we're waiting for a CEO to be named and nominated and blah, blah, blah. You set the date and GCOM now has a responsibility to get to that date.
So,
And that in itself is something of duplicity.
So in the absence of them fulfilling these processes that are mandated by the Constitution to be fulfilled, what type of action can the citizens take to hold persons accountable to ensure that those practices that were created for our governance are completed to the T? What can we do as the people if people decide to just say, you know what, no election right now, stalemate, stop it?
The first thing that the people can do is to continue to be vocal about it. Don't ever feel that you're powerless to do anything about anything. Ensure that you're vocal, that you highlight it, because until you say something, remember, you don't have mind readers. And the only way I can communicate with you is through body language or words. If I stand behind that room, you would never know what I'm thinking. So continue to be vocal about it. Next is chalk it up on the wall, right? Say no local government election as was constitutionally due. There is one check or an X. That is what you want to do, right? And then
you got to keep account of it.
Right, and the ultimate accountability mechanism comes in 2025. When that check now becomes very important, you say, look, non-constitutional compliance, you look at all the things they give away of Guyana, the non-local content legislation that is weak, or whatever it is you want to make a list of the things that are important to you, make that list so that when you come 2025, look at that and say, all right, well, can I truly endorse this political party for what they have or have not done? Take a look at it
based on their performance.
But Anthony, I want to go back to this. When people come to you and say, if you don't vote for us, you vote for them, and they continue to rig, and we don't do this and this and this, what you have to sit down there and say is, in a fight in the ring, look at it as a two boxers slugging it out, almost equally matched. They're going to slug and slug and slug. The only way that fight has to stop is when you put a referee in here, because the referee will pull them apart and say, look, you have to stop. That is what we intend on doing in 2025. So it doesn't matter who stands in the ring. It doesn't matter who thinks that they've got a bigger fist or whatever to swing. Once you have a referee in the ring, then that conversation is no longer relevant.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've always encouraged and promoted diversity within the upper levels of our country's management and political situation. In my opinion, it has been two parties for far too long, and the way it has been managed in this country, I don't think that it brings about fairness. For instance, with GCOM's commission, I'm still pretty sure you got half of it is from one group, half is from another group, and I don't think there's any independent representative in the middle there for anything else. So these are all things that I hope that we can change. and we could bring a fairness to this spectrum, to this platform.
Here is how GCOM is set up right now. What they should potentially do is simply remove all of the PPP commissioners, remove all of the APLU or PNC commissioners, and leave the decision to the chair, because we know that ultimately and at the end of it all is that Madam Chair has to be the deciding vote. So if I'm the deciding vote,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter if you have 3 and 3, because you know they're never going to agree on
They're
something.
not agreeing.
Exactly. That's my humble view.
So like, and do those commissioners get paid from GCOM to hold us here?
I think that they do.
Are you serious? So they get paid there to sit there and constantly put us in a stalemate?
Create headache.
Yeah,
I've gotten a few gray hairs from since.
I don't think persons in that particular position for that commission should be paid. I think because that means that they could sit there and the amount of time they could waste, they get them paid for it. We don't see no benefit. They need to be just genuine people. In fact, I feel there should be an election cycle to pick independent people to go there. Even an independent GCOM chair. I don't think the president should pick GCOM's chair.
I strongly
think
believe,
that's very,
I strongly
very
believe that
wrong.
the Guyana Elections Commission should be run by civil society. I believe that the judiciary, that the oversight body for the judiciary should be from civil society, and that the police commission, you remove it from a police commission, you put it as a board of directors that are from civil society. I think if you transform those three in itself, that you're going to see a difference in this country.
Well,
of course, the government will do
I have a recommendation. I believe that the people in charge of GCOM, whoever it may be, should be an elected public official and not connected to any party.
No, but if they're elected, it must be in some degree of...
Well, there would be a process, but I don't think it should. I think it should be more of a citizen pool of people who are qualified
You know what I
to do the
strongly
job,
believe?
as opposed to somebody just saying, "Listen, I like you for this job. I'm going to put you here." That allows too much room for favoritism, and it shouldn't just be limited to judges and lawyers.
But why not follow a Canadian structure where the chair of the commission is not permitted to vote? They cannot vote in Canada.
Yeah,
The
but
chairman of the
even if they can't vote,
That's
don't
fine.
mean that they ain't got
No,
friends.
no. They can have friends. You have friends on both sides, right? You can't restrict
There
people
needs to be
different.
there needs to be proof
And
of
the
non-bias.
budget in itself that the commission, Elections Canada has, it doesn't have to go through any Ministry of Finance and all these things. It goes to Parliament, and Parliament is just a matter of process for accounting. It's a tick, and it's gone.
Because as
So
it
you
is,
don't have
as
to
it is
take it
right
to
now, when they
Parliament
want to
and
get
vote for it.
paid, they still got to go through the same
The
people.
Ministry of Finance,
Yeah,
which is
so-
the government, and all these things.
Yeah, so there's still a certain degree of opportunity for manipulation within that type of structure.
Absolutely.
So these are some things. Well, Lennox, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. In fact, we got some plans today getting cool, and I'm gonna ask for something else cool to drink. And one day maybe I can be lucky and a magic carpet will come and pick me up, right? And we can go and check out these places. But I tell you this, it's always a pleasure, my brother. It's been a while. For those of you out there that don't know, it's okay to be friends with everyone once, you're good people. It's okay to share difference in opinion. It's okay to socialize, right? Just remember, we're not out here to push anything negative. It's all about bringing the people together. It's all about sharing knowledge and information. And hopefully we can reach out to many more people, come on board, share your opinion. Like Mr. Shuman said, the only thing that we really have that we can do, at least one of the primary things that we can do to help hold our leaders accountable, is to be vocal. That is one of the safest things to do. Just don't say anything illegal, because they're gonna lock you up. don't do nothing slanderous, right? Because they're gonna lock you up, right? And don't tell nobody about their movement, because they're gonna probably come and beat you up. In the meantime, right? This is Papa Snow. You guys take care. It's a pleasure. And we love our people. We love Guyana. Respect. Take care. God bless.